A routine visit to a store took a shocking turn when a racist manager refused to acknowledge the authority of a black CEO. What happened next left everyone in the room speechless. Maya Johnson, a highly successful CEO, walked into one of her company's stores dressed casually, just like any other customer. But the manager, Craig Miller, had no idea who she was, and his behavior toward her revealed his true character. This wasn't just an awkward encounter. It became a powerful lesson in karma, and you won't believe how quickly the tables turned. Before we dive into this story of justice and instant karma, let us know where you're watching from. Have you ever seen someone get what they deserved right away? Stick with us, because Maya's story is one you'll want to hear and share. Maya Johnson was a trailblazer in the corporate world. As the CEO of a major retail chain, she was known for her intelligence, compassion, and hands-on approach. Despite her success, Maya had never forgotten her roots. She had started her career as a store associate, learning the ins and outs of the business from the ground up. This gave her a unique perspective on what it meant to work in her company. She wasn't the type to sit behind a desk all day. Maya loved visiting stores unannounced to see how employees were treated and how customers experienced the brand she worked so hard to build. On a sunny afternoon, Maya decided to stop by one of the stores in a busy downtown district. Dressed in casual jeans and a hoodie, she looked like any other shopper. She enjoyed blending in, as it allowed her to observe things as they truly were, not as people wanted her to see them. She had no entourage, no flashy signs of her position, just a notebook and her keen eye for detail. This particular store was run by Craig Miller, a longtime manager who had developed a reputation among employees for being difficult to work with. Craig was in his mid-40s, with a gruff demeanor and a sharp tongue. He believed that his years in retail gave him the right to treat people however he wanted. Unfortunately, his arrogance often masked his deep-seated prejudices, which he rarely bothered to hide. His staff knew to tread carefully around him, and customers who didn't meet his standards were often treated with thinly veiled contempt. When Maya entered the store, she noticed a few things right away. The shelves were stocked, but the employees looked stressed and uncomfortable. She greeted a young cashier who smiled nervously but didn't make much conversation. Maya walked through the aisles, quietly observing how the team interacted with customers. As she moved toward the back of the store, she saw Craig berating an employee for not stocking items fast enough. "Do I have to do everything myself around here?" Craig barked, his voice loud enough to turn heads. The employee mumbled an apology, but Craig waved him off dismissively. Maya's brow furrowed. This wasn't the kind of environment she wanted in her stores. She approached Craig, her voice calm and polite. "Excuse me, are you the manager here?" Craig turned, giving her a quick, dismissive glance. "Yeah, that's me. What do you want?" "I'd like to discuss some concerns I have about the store," Maya said. "Is there a place where we can talk?" Craig crossed his arms, smirking. "Look, lady, if you've got a complaint, take it to customer service. I don't have time for this." Maya's expression didn't change. "I believe it's important to address this directly with you." Craig rolled his eyes, clearly irritated. "Listen, I've got a store to run. Unless you're here to buy something, I suggest you leave the staff alone." Several employees and customers glanced over, sensing the tension. Maya remained composed. "I think you'll want to hear what I have to say." Craig laughed humorlessly. "Oh, really? And why is that?" Maya didn't answer right away. Instead, she calmly said, "Because I have a vested interest in how this store operates. Your attitude toward both staff and customers reflects directly on the company." Craig looked her up and down, his smirk widening. You? A vested interest. Lady, don't make me laugh. What are you, some mystery shopper? Please, go play your little games somewhere else. The employees nearby exchanged nervous glances. They didn't know who Maya was, but they could tell this wasn't just another customer. Maya stood her ground, her expression unchanging. I'll give you one more chance to have a proper conversation with me. It's in your best interest. Craig scoffed. Get out of my store. The tension in the room was thick. Maya nodded slowly, her calm demeanor unwavering. Very well, if that's how you want to handle this. As she turned to walk away, Craig muttered under his breath, These people always think they're so important. Maya stopped. The room went silent. She turned back to Craig, her voice steady but firm. You just made a very big mistake. Craig frowned, confused, but still oblivious to who he was speaking to. Oh, yeah. And what are you going to do about it? Maya didn't answer. She simply pulled out her phone, dialed a number, and said, This is Maya Johnson. I need a regional supervisor at the downtown location immediately. Craig's face dropped as realization started to dawn on him. The employees and customers looked on in stunned silence. Something big was about to happen, and Craig's arrogant smirk was nowhere to be seen. Craig Miller stared at Maya Johnson, his arrogant smirk fading as her words sunk in. She had just identified herself as Maya Johnson, and though the name hadn't fully registered yet, there was something in her calm authority that unsettled him. He tried to brush it off. Look, lady, he said, still trying to maintain control. I don't care who you are, or who you think you're calling. You can't just walk in here and throw your weight around. Maya didn't respond to his taunts. She stayed calm, her phone still in her hand. Yes, she said into the phone. This is urgent. I need the regional supervisor to meet me here within the hour. Thank you. She hung up and turned back to Craig. Now, where were we? Craig folded his arms, glaring at her. What is this supposed to be? Some kind of joke? Who do you think you are? Maya stepped closer, her voice steady but firm. I think you've already figured out who I am, Craig. But in case you haven't, I'll spell it out for you. I'm Maya Johnson, the CEO of this company. This is my store, and you're representing it and me right now. The room fell silent. Employees froze, their wide eyes darting between Craig and Maya. Customers stopped browsing, pretending not to listen but clearly paying attention. Craig's face turned pale, his bravado crumbling as the weight of her words hit him. You're the CEO, he stammered, his voice suddenly quieter. That's not possible. You don't... He stopped himself, but the implication in his tone was clear. His eyes scanned her casual clothes again, disbelief written all over his face. Yes, I am, Maya replied evenly, cutting through his hesitation. And I don't need to explain myself to you. What I do need is an explanation for your unprofessional behavior toward me and your staff. Craig blinked rapidly, his mind racing for a way out. I didn't know who you were, he said defensively. You can't just show up here dressed like that and expect me to know. Maya's expression didn't waver. And you think that excuses the way you've been treating people? Do you believe that someone's appearance or status determines how much respect they deserve? Craig opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The silence was deafening. The employees standing nearby looked at each other, exchanging knowing glances. They had endured Craig's behavior for years, but now someone was finally holding him accountable. You've been dismissive, rude, and unprofessional, Maya continued. Not just to me, but to your team. I've been observing how you speak to your employees, and it's unacceptable. This store is supposed to represent our company's values: respect, inclusivity, and excellence. Instead, It's reflecting your arrogance and prejudice." Craig's face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "I've been running this store successfully for years," he snapped. "I don't need some corporate outsider coming in here and telling me how to do my job." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Corporate outsider?" "Craig, I started as a store associate, just like your team here. I've worked on the floor, stocked shelves, and dealt with customers. I know exactly what it takes to run a store, and I can tell you this. Success isn't measured by sales alone. It's about the culture you create, the way you treat people." Craig's confidence faltered further. He glanced around the room, realizing that the employees and customers were all watching intently. His usual bluster wasn't going to save him this time. I didn't mean any harm," he said, his tone softening. "It was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," Maya repeated, her voice sharp. "Is it also a misunderstanding that you've been belittling your staff and dismissing customer concerns? I heard what you said to your employee earlier. Is that how you motivate your team?" Craig stammered, searching for words. "I was just trying to make sure things got done." Maya crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. "Leadership isn't about barking orders or making people feel small. It's about inspiring them, supporting them, and creating an environment where they can succeed. What you've been doing is the opposite." The tension in the room was thick. Employees exchanged glances, some nodding subtly, as if silently agreeing with everything Maya said. A few customers quietly cheered her on, their admiration for her growing with every word. Craig's desperation became apparent. "I can fix this," he blurted out. "I didn't mean for things to get out of hand. I'll do better." Maya took a deep breath, her tone softening slightly, but still firm. "I appreciate your willingness to change, but this isn't just about one moment. Your actions have created a toxic environment here, and it's my responsibility to address that." She turned to the employees, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "I want you all to know that your voices matter. This store is a part of something bigger, and no one, no manager, no leader, has the right to treat you with anything less than respect." The employees nodded, some even clapping quietly. Craig looked as though the ground had fallen out from under him. He knew he couldn't argue anymore. Maya's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and said, "The regional supervisor will be here shortly. In the meantime, Craig, I suggest you reflect on how your behavior has impacted this store and your future with this company." With that, she turned and walked toward the front of the store, leaving Craig standing there, speechless. The employees followed her with their eyes, a mix of awe and hope in their expressions. Justice was finally being served, and Craig knew his time as the untouchable boss was over. The air in the store was thick with tension as Maya Johnson moved to the center of the room, her presence commanding attention. Craig Miller, now visibly flustered, stood frozen near the counter, his earlier arrogance replaced with nervous fidgeting. Employees and customers alike had gathered, sensing that something monumental was about to unfold. Maya turned back to Craig, her voice calm but firm. "Craig, let's be clear about what's happening here. Your behavior today, and the behavior I've observed during my visit, goes against everything this company stands for. I gave you the chance to engage with me professionally, and you chose not to." Craig stammered, trying to regain his footing. "I didn't know who you were, Miss Maya. If I had known, I would have treated you differently." Maya's eyes narrowed slightly. "And that's exactly the problem, Craig. Respect shouldn't depend on someone's title or appearance. It should be the foundation of how you treat everyone, your employees, your customers, and yes, even someone walking in off the street." The employees exchanged glances, some nodding in silent agreement. A young cashier near the counter took a cautious step forward. her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for saying that," she said. "It's been really hard working here." Maya gave the cashier a reassuring nod before turning back to Craig. "Do you hear that?" she asked. "Your team is speaking up because they finally feel safe enough to do so. That should tell you everything you need to know about how you've been leading this store." Craig's face turned red, a mix of embarrassment and frustration. "Look, I've been running this store for years. I know what it takes to keep things moving. Sometimes you have to be tough to get results." "Tough?" Maya repeated, her voice laced with quiet authority. "There's a difference between being firm and being disrespectful. Leadership isn't about making people feel small. It's about inspiring them to do their best. And from what I've seen, your leadership style has been anything but inspiring." The tension in the room grew as Craig struggled to respond. The customers standing nearby whispered among themselves, their faces reflecting a mix of disbelief and satisfaction at the scene unfolding before them. Maya continued, her tone unyielding. "This isn't just about how you treated me today. This is about a pattern of behavior that's hurt your team, your customers, and this store's reputation. And as the CEO, it's my responsibility to address it." Craig's desperation was evident now. "I can change," he said quickly. "I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Just please don't take this any further." Maya studied him for a moment, her gaze unwavering. "Change isn't something you promise in a moment of crisis, Craig. It's something you prove over time. And right now, your actions have left me no choice but to take immediate action." At that moment, the store's regional supervisor arrived, walking briskly through the door. He was a middle-aged man with a professional demeanor who looked immediately to Maya for guidance. "Ms. Johnson," he said, addressing her with respect, "I came as soon as I could." "Thank you for coming," Maya said, gesturing toward Craig. "We need to have a conversation about the management of this store." The regional supervisor nodded and motioned for Craig to follow him toward a quieter corner of the store. Craig hesitated, glancing back at Maya with a pleading look, but she had already turned her attention to the employees. Maya addressed the team directly, her voice carrying warmth and sincerity. "I want to apologize to all of you for what you've had to endure. This isn't the kind of workplace we strive for, and it's not acceptable. Moving forward, changes will be made to ensure that you're treated with the respect and support you deserve." The employees responded with a mix of relief and gratitude. One of them, an older gentleman who had been with the company for over a decade, spoke up. "Thank you, Miss Johnson. We've been waiting a long time for someone to see what's really been going on here." Maya smiled at him. "You shouldn't have had to wait. It's my job to make sure every store in this company reflects the values we stand for. And I promise you, that starts today." Meanwhile, in the corner of the store, the regional supervisor was speaking to Craig, whose shoulders slumped as the conversation grew more intense. The employees watched as Craig handed over his name badge. His expression, a mixture of shame and defeat. It was clear that the consequences of his actions had finally caught up with him. The regional supervisor returned to Maya and gave her a small nod. "We'll ensure that the transition is handled smoothly, Ms. Johnson." "Thank you," Maya said. She then turned back to the employees. "You'll have my full support during this transition. If you ever feel that your concerns aren't being heard, please know that my door is always open." The room filled with applause, not just from the employees but also from the customers who had witnessed the confrontation. It was a rare moment of justice being served right before their eyes. As the scene began to settle, Maya approached Craig, who was standing off to the side, looking defeated. "Craig," she said, her tone softer now, "I hope you take this as a chance to reflect and grow. Everyone deserves the opportunity to learn from their mistakes, But that starts with accountability. Craig nodded silently, his gaze fixed on the floor. Maya turned back to the store, her heart heavy but resolute. She knew this was just one store, one manager, and one moment, but it symbolized something much bigger. It was a reminder that leadership wasn't about titles or power. It was about integrity, respect, and the courage to do what was right. As Maya walked out of the store, she glanced back at the employees who stood a little taller now, their faces brighter with hope. Justice had been served, and a new chapter was about to begin. As the store returned to a buzz of activity, employees and customers still whispered about what had just happened. Craig Miller, the now dismissed manager, quietly left the store. His head hung low. But the real twist was still unfolding inside, as Maya Johnson stayed behind to address the employees directly. Gathering the team near the register area, Maya began to speak, her voice calm, but filled with purpose. "I want to share something important with you all," she said. "You might see me as the CEO, someone at the top of the company, but I started just like you, working on the floor, dealing with customers and managing the day-to-day challenges of this job." Her words caught everyone's attention. Employees leaned in, surprised to hear their CEO had once stood in their shoes. "When I was younger," Maya continued, "I worked in a store much like this one, and I'll never forget the manager I had back then. He treated us like we were disposable, like we didn't matter. Every day, I told myself that if I ever got the chance, I would make things better for people like us." The employees listened intently, her story resonating deeply. A young cashier spoke up, her voice hesitant but filled with emotion. "That's how it's felt here sometimes. We're just numbers, not people." Maya nodded. "And that's exactly what needs to change. This company is built on the hard work of people like you, not just the managers or executives, but every single person who shows up and gives their best. You deserve respect, appreciation, and a workplace where you can thrive." The employees began clapping softly, the sound growing louder as Maya's words sank in. But then she delivered the real twist. "What many of you don't know," she said, "is that I've been visiting stores like this undercover for months. I've been observing how our teams are treated, and unfortunately, this isn't the only location where I've seen problems." Gasps rippled through the group. Some employees exchanged nervous glances, while others nodded in understanding. Maya's undercover visits were not just about this one store. They were part of a larger effort to identify and address systemic issues. "I'm not here to punish anyone unfairly," Maya continued, "but I am here to hold people accountable and make changes that will benefit everyone. That includes better training for managers, stronger protections for employees, and a system where your voices are truly heard." The crowd erupted in applause. Employees felt seen and heard in a way they hadn't before. Customers who overheard the conversation chimed in with their own cheers, impressed by Maya's hands-on leadership. As the applause died down, Maya gestured toward the young cashier who had spoken earlier. "What's your name?" she asked. "Erica," the cashier said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Erica," Maya said with a warm smile. "You're exactly the kind of person we need in leadership. Someone who understands what it's like on the front lines and cares about the people around her." Erica's eyes widened. "Me? Leadership? You're not just anything," Maya interrupted. "You're dedicated, insightful, and brave enough to speak up. That's what makes a great leader." The other employees nodded in agreement, and Erica's cheeks flushed with pride. Maya turned to the regional supervisor, who had remained quietly observing the scene. "Let's make sure Erica gets the mentorship and opportunities she needs to grow within this company," Maya said. The supervisor smiled. "Absolutely, Ms. Johnson. Consider it done." The revelation wasn't just about Craig's dismissal or the store's future. It was about the power of leadership, grounded in empathy and action. Maya's story inspired everyone in the room, proving that even the highest-ranking leader could and should connect with those on the ground. Before leaving, Maya addressed the group one final time. Change doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with moments like this. Each of you has a role to play in making this store and this company a place where people want to work and shop. I believe in you, and I'm here to make sure you have everything you need to succeed." The employees cheered once more, their spirits lifted by Maya's words and actions. As she walked toward the exit, customers stopped her to thank her for standing up for what was right. One elderly woman holding a shopping bag said, "You're exactly what we need in the world right now. Someone who isn't afraid to do the right thing." Maya smiled, her heart full. "Thank you," she said. "But it's not just about me. It's about all of us." Outside the store, the media had begun to gather. News of the confrontation had spread quickly, and reporters were eager to hear more about the CEO who had stepped into her own store under cover to stand up for justice. Maya paused briefly before speaking to them. "This isn't about making headlines," she said firmly. "It's about making a difference." As the cameras flashed and the questions flew, Maya thought back to her younger self, standing in a store uniform, dreaming of a better future. That dream had become her mission, and today was proof that it was possible to create change. One store, one team, one moment at a time. As Maya Johnson stepped outside the store, she was greeted by a small crowd that had gathered, some holding their phones, others simply watching in awe. The story of her confrontation with Craig Miller had already begun spreading online, and whispers of her undercover visit were igniting conversations about workplace culture across the city. Inside the store, Craig Miller's dismissal was being finalized by the regional supervisor. He handed over his keys and ID badge, his once overbearing presence now replaced with quiet resignation. Employees watched as he left the store for the final time, their expressions a mixture of relief and vindication. Craig's departure sent a clear message. No one, regardless of their rank, could act with disrespect and impunity under Maya's leadership. His behavior had gone unchecked for too long, but the swift action taken by the CEO left no doubt that the company valued accountability. Later, it was announced that Craig would no longer work for the company. The news spread quickly, and employees at other stores expressed relief, knowing that similar toxic behaviors might now be addressed throughout the organization. Back in her office the next day, Maya sat at her desk, reviewing a stack of reports. These documents contained feedback from employees across the company, many of whom, inspired by Maya's actions, had shared their own experiences of workplace mistreatment. Maya read each one carefully, her resolve strengthening with every story. "This isn't just about one store," she said to herself. "It's about making real, lasting change." She thought back to her own beginnings, working tirelessly on the retail floor while dreaming of a better future. It was those experiences that had shaped her, and they reminded her why she fought so hard for fairness and respect at every level of her company. Her phone buzzed, and it was an email from Erica, the young cashier she had encouraged during her visit. Erica wrote to thank Maya for believing in her, and shared that she had already begun leadership training. The email ended with a line that brought a smile to Maya's face. "You showed me that I'm more than just a cashier. I want to make this company better, just like you do." Word of Maya's actions sparked a wave of reforms across the company. Managers were required to undergo additional training on leadership, inclusivity, and conflict resolution. A new feedback system was implemented, allowing employees to share concerns anonymously. and ensuring they reached the highest levels of the organization. The company's HR department also began conducting regular audits of store environments to ensure employees were being treated with respect. These measures, coupled with Maya's personal commitment to visiting stores regularly, created a ripple effect of positive change. Customers took notice, too. The company's reputation grew as more people learned about the CEO, who wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty to ensure her company's values were upheld. Sales increased, but more importantly, so did employee satisfaction and retention. The impact of the incident didn't stop at the store, or even the company. The story of Maya's confrontation with Craig and her undercover mission resonated deeply with people around the world. Social media was flooded with comments from employees in other industries, sharing their own struggles and calling for similar accountability in their workplaces. "Maya Johnson is a true leader," one tweet read. "She's not just about profits, she's about people." A local news outlet even interviewed some of the employees from the store where the incident had occurred. "She gave us hope," one employee said. "It feels good to know that someone at the top actually cares about what happens to us." At the same time, Maya became a role model for aspiring leaders, particularly for young women and people of color. Her story was proof that success didn't have to come at the expense of empathy and integrity. Reflecting on everything that had happened, Maya knew that her actions were just the beginning. Respect, kindness, and accountability shouldn't be extraordinary, she told a group of executives during a company meeting. They should be the standard. She emphasized that leadership wasn't about titles or power. It was about service. As leaders, our job is to lift others up, not tear them down, she said. The strength of our company is measured by how we treat the people who make it run. Her message resonated far beyond the walls of her company. Articles were written about her leadership style, and she was invited to speak at conferences about workplace culture and the importance of diversity and inclusion. Back at the store, Erica thrived in her new leadership training program. With Maya's encouragement and the support of her co-workers, she gained confidence and began taking on more responsibilities. Her positivity and determination inspired those around her, and she quickly became a role model for her peers. One day, while running a team meeting, Erica glanced at the store's mission statement, which had been updated after Maya's visit. It read, "Respect and integrity are at the heart of everything we do." Erica smiled, knowing she was part of something bigger than herself. Maya's decision to step into one of her stores undercover had started as a way to stay connected to the foundation of her company. But it had become so much more. It was a reminder that change didn't always come from grand gestures. It often began with small, deliberate actions and the courage to stand up for what was right. Walking through her company's headquarters, Maya paused to look at a bulletin board covered in thank you notes from employees. One note stood out. It read, "Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. You make us believe in a better future." Maya smiled. "That's why I do this," she thought. "Because everyone deserves to believe in something better." As Maya Johnson stepped out of her office that evening, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Her actions had not only sparked change within her company, but also resonated far beyond its walls. The story of her confrontation with Craig Miller was already inspiring countless others to demand respect and fairness in their own workplaces. This wasn't just about one manager or one store. It was about a broader lesson: the power of standing up for what's right and creating environments where everyone is treated with dignity. Maya knew this was just the beginning of the journey, but she also knew that even small steps could lead to lasting change. Have you ever witnessed or experienced a moment where someone stood up for justice or fairness? Maybe it was in your workplace, your school, or your community. Share your story in the comments below. We'd love to hear about the moments that inspired you or made you believe in the power of kindness and accountability. If this story moved you, share it with your friends and family. Imagine how many more people could be inspired by Maya's leadership and the positive changes that followed. And if you love stories about justice, courage, and change, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us for more. Together, we can make a difference.